Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you here. I'm your host, Natalia, and thank you for taking the time to join us today as we talk about scaling and bootstrapping mobility companies. Before we begin, to make sure we're helping you as best as we can in today's session, we have a Q&A box to source your questions. So feel free to type them into the Q&A box and we'll answer your questions during the session. Also, don't worry about making notes immediately, since we'll send the session recording your way as soon as possible after the webinar. I want to thank our speaker for taking the time to share their knowledge and expertise here. First, let's take a moment to introduce our 4 amazing guest speakers. First, we have Dan Porter, a Chief Commercial Officer at Nextport. Dan is a seasoned business leader with over 20 years of experience in sales and marketing, offering extensive global experience across a variety of regions, including Australia, APAC, EMEA, emerging markets, and the UK. With a proven track record of success in business transformations, sales growth, channels management, business development, and marketing, he has passion for team and data-driven leadership to drive business growth and sustainable P&L performance. For the second speaker, we have Jan Plast, co-founder at It's a Virus and founder of Malali. Jan is a highly experienced IT professional with a decade of expertise in the field. He is dedicated to creating challenging software solutions that drive positive change in society. Jan has a proven track record of successfully leading software companies, and his latest venture, Malali, is a prime example of his innovative spirit. Malali is a P2P marketplace for electric vehicles that aims to electrify land mobility in Asia by allowing people to rent electric vehicles directly from one another without the need for intermediaries. Jan has a proven track record of successfully leading and scaling software companies. The third speaker, we have Paul Royman, co-founder at Transer and Links. Paul is an independent and strategic associative thinker known for his vertical approach to problem solving. He excels in bringing together diverse individuals and ideas to create structured solutions that achieve specific objectives. He has a proven track record of helping others to achieve their goals while aligning them with project objectives. He specialized in driving strategic innovation within organization and has extensive experience in the public transport sector, particularly around stations, smart cards, and innovative services. Last speaker, we have Daniel Kirby, Commercial Director at Tomorrow's Journey. Daniel Kirby is a seasoned professional in the tech industry, serving as Commercial Director of Tomorrow's Journey, a software company revolutionizing the automotive sector. Dan is committed to excellence and is bringing new and innovative digital solutions to the fleet industry. With his entrepreneurial spirit, deep understanding of startup challenges, and strong business acumen, he is a valuable asset to the company and is helping shape the future of the mobility sector. Dan is also heading to the new office in India and working closely with the local team to ensure a seamless integration. And now, without further ado, please welcome Johan Verhul, the CEO of It's a Virus, as the moderator for today's webinar. Let's start.
Thank you very much, Leah, for the introduction, and thanks again to all the speakers for joining. So usually we have in our webinars 2, 3, 4 speakers who do a presentation, and afterwards we always have just not enough time to do a proper panel discussion. So we decided to take a bit of a different angle this time. We only do a panel discussion, and as always, we try to see what's relevant, what's actual happening in the market, and get people around this subject and just share their vision. For anyone listening, feel free to ask your questions. I will also feel free to interrupt the speakers and ask the questions directly. For now, I would like to get started with some questions to the speakers directly. Just, of course, Leah, you made an introduction already, but I think it's nice if we hear from people themselves what they're working on at the moment. So Daniel, I would like to get started with asking you, like, obviously you are fully immersed in this mobility space, but can you explain to us what you're working on right now?
I'm Daniel for the day. We were just working that out, me and Dan, between us. Yeah, so Tomorrow's Journey's been around for a little while now, but predominantly we're building, well, we're an enterprise SaaS solution, but we build out technology basically for new mobility solutions. So we're not white label, but we have built lots of modules that work for lots of different use cases, and we customize them heavily for our clients. So we work across car subscription, contactless and digital rental, contactless test drives, remote access, courtesy cars, anything that really requires access to the vehicle. We're trying to streamline and revolutionize that customer experience side.
Okay. So just one thing that pops in my mind, how you're dealing with keys and security, like that is basically your topic then, right?
Yeah, we work, well, actually it's a kind of a small part. The remote access is a small part of what we're offering at the minute. So particularly for the contactless test drives project we're doing with Hyundai across Europe. It's a promotional project. So they're basically putting their new models around Europe, and they're allowing potential customers to take the cars out for a couple of hours at a time and bring the car back without anyone being involved. For the access part of that, we have a partner that provide remote access technology that gets installed third party in the vehicle. And the keys are in an RFID box in the glove box. So our system unlocks the car remotely. Then the customer takes the keys from the RFID box and they use the car as if it's basically their own car. Then when they come back, they put the keys back in the box and then they remote lock it for our system. Okay. We haven't come across an OEM yet that will let us have access to their connected car. Everyone seems to be very secure about that. Hyundai would have access to their cars.
For that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Daniel. Looking forward for all your insights later on. Paul, welcome again. I want to congratulate you first for raising another round of capital. I recently saw some good news. Can you explain to everyone what you're working on right now? And what you're doing.
Yeah, maybe it's about the funding was around Transfer. That's a scale up that needs money still. I hope in September this year we will be probably break even. And Transfer, what it does is just enabling through an API or webhook train tickets, public transport tickets into front end, large end front end. So we're connected to Free now. It's a kind of German Uber. We're integrating to Air France, so you can book your flight and directly you can book your train ticket. And also we are backing up most of the mass applications in many in Europe, like Move It or others. If you want to buy a ticket, we do the fulfillment, the payment, and create the ticket, etc. That's what we do with Transa. And Links is more data analytics. That's really a data analytics company. We have an office in Sydney and we are opening one in Toronto now. We have one in the Netherlands. That's really the smart people that do the smart thing. That's a really easy business to grow. It's an hourly invoice business, so that's not really so difficult to do, but I'll explain later.
All right, thanks for sharing. So what Adyen is doing for e-commerce, you guys are doing for mobility, if I have to sum it up super quickly.
Yeah, perfect. That's the easy way. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks. And yeah, looking forward also for your insights later on, Paul. Thanks. Dan, the floor is all yours. Can you just share a little bit what you guys are working on at the moment?
I certainly can. So Nextport is an electric and zero emissions transport provider. So largely what we're doing at the moment is building and deploying electric buses, electric coaches, and zero emissions infrastructure to support that. So we see the operators require a great deal of support in terms of managing the transition from what is essentially an analog business into a digital business. And that means that they've got to get the systems right, they've got to get the application set right, and then they can drop the asset, whatever that may be, a truck, a bus, a car, onto the end of it at the end. So So our role is really to act as the integrator to pull all of that together. We also develop and build our own vehicles. And we have markets now across not just public transport, but also private sort of charter transport, light commercial vehicles, and ports and distribution through yard tractors and things like that. So all zero emissions, but really kind of looking at that front edge of the transition from internal combustion engines into full zero emission infrastructure.
Yeah, obviously there's much more needed to adopt electric vehicles, right? You can buy the vehicle, but then a whole different show starts with charging, maintenance, and make sure you utilize your vehicle in a smart way.
Yeah, and we were talking about it today actually. We just been to see an operator this afternoon, and the observation was that they're using electric vehicles, but they're still driving on light diesel vehicles. They're missing the opportunity to really use the data that they get to inform their decision making and start to drive the business in a completely different way. So we see that there's the fundamental change in technology in terms of the work that we're doing in terms of building the buses and the trucks and the vans, but also a change in the business practices and the processes required of the organizations that are adopting them as well.
Yeah, you guys shared me a nice story where a school is using the bus not only to bring the kids from house to school, but also to basically act as a battery for when the school, for when the kids are already at school, that the bus can charge itself and deliver cheaper electricity to the school.
Yeah. It's super cool. I've been to that school this afternoon. It's a company called Westside Christian College up in Queensland. And exactly that, they've put about 400 kilowatts of solar on the roof of the school now. So they're running the school completely off the solar, but they were still driving a fleet of about 20 diesel buses. So we're just in the process now of working with them as to how they can capture that solar into an ESS, into a storage system, and then use virtual power plant technology to peak shave that back onto the grid, which will then fund the replacement of their fleet with the battery electric buses. And as time goes by, those battery electric buses will then also be part of their energy storage for the school. Because obviously they only use the electricity for about 7-8 hours a day, and for about 180 days of the year. So there's probably 170 days of the year when there's nobody in the school, and that all of that electricity can then be traded back into the grid as required. And the buses will form a fundamental part of that structure.
Super interesting. Looking forward to hear more later on. Then thanks, Jan. Good to see you.
Hey, Jochen. Good to see you. Well, yeah. So here at Malali, we're working on a peer-to-peer marketplace for renting electric vehicles, and so we're on a mission to right now electrifying Bali by offering more sustainable ways of transportation for tourists and local residents that want to find that way. So yeah, we make it pretty much accessible for them to find the best feasible vehicles on our platform. What we do is we work together with a lot of different vendors around the island that have their own electric vehicles, and they put them on our platform, and we rent them out on behalf of them. So you can pretty much compare the model with Airbnb. But in this case, it's not houses, but it's electric vehicles.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jan. After this introduction, I would like to get started on the first topic, which is all about balancing investments and cash flow within this mobility industry, which is challenging, of course, because we have been in this mobility space for a long time, and we always see the same story returning. There, you need to do a lot of upfront investments in order to get your business operational, and from there on you need to move towards profitability. But to get profit, you need users, and usually you need many of them. So especially now when venture capital is drying up a little bit, we all rely more on cash flow. It's as simple as that. So this is the topic of the webinar, of course. So we have to bootstrap. We have to find ways of becoming profitable without additional money. I think that is a good way of doing business anyway, but it's a necessity even more. So then, because you guys are really deep into hardware, I would like to ask you first, like, do you see this happening in Australia as well?
So we do, yeah, for sure. There's certainly less money around than there was. I think valuations on businesses are probably less than they were a while ago, and I think that real bubble's burst. I think it is the $64 billion question in so many ways. Is how do we ensure that we've got enough money to be able to do what we want to do and get to the next stage? I think we get it right a lot of the time. I think we get it wrong sometimes. But I think there's probably a few things that really come out that are really clear to me in terms of where we need to go. We've learned that we've got to have laser precision in terms of our purpose, of real understanding and clarity of purpose. We've got some great things going through, but sometimes they're just not the right things, or it's not the right time. We know that we need to get real commitment. So we've got to think and plan really carefully of what we're going to invest into in terms of prototypes or demonstration vehicles that will enable us to get the widest possible impact into the market. I think it's really easy to jump into things, and it's really hard to sit there and think, actually, is this the right thing to do? So I think they're probably the two biggest pieces, that real kind of clarity of purpose, knowing exactly what we want to do, and then really planning, how do you make sure that the vehicles you are going to build, or the vehicles that you are going to deploy at a test stage, whether that's as proof of concept for customers or as demonstration vehicles, that you're going to get the maximum possible use out of them. That they're not going to be just one use, but actually, can you get as wide as possible? So an example of that would be, we've been looking at light commercial trucks, and we've realized that if we bring in a sort of 7-8 ton truck, that proves the case for all of the other trucks. So we've looked at that one rather than at the 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, and bigger ones. That's the sweet spot, and it covers a wide enough group of customers with a wide enough capability statement that then we can take orders on the back of that for other vehicles.
Yeah. Okay. So if I hear you correctly, what you say is it's easy to get excited about opportunities, as it of course always is, but it's difficult to monetize on ideas. And I recognize that. In the past decades, I've met so many people who are in this ID phase, but it's easy to stay stuck in that ID phase. But then really nailing it down, putting in the hard work, that is a huge challenge, of course. All right.
Making it real to the customers.
And in terms of scalability, how do you guys want to try to combine hardware and software?
Well, I think, for us, the software platform is the way that our customers can run their businesses in the future. So we're working with a product at the moment called Zenergy, and really it's a data amalgamation. So it's about bringing in all the data sources from the bus, from the depot, from the chargers, from the organization itself, bringing them all into a dashboard environment and enabling that data then to be used in a business planning and a business operating methodology. So I think the software becomes a massively important part. Again, the development of that software has to be done in a manner that we can see quick applications. So if we're going to do it, to be able to deploy it in that first 6 to 12 months and get a return on it. Otherwise, we're going to be developing and never returning the value.
That is the trick with software development in general, of course. It's that the balance is to build a solid foundation, but also to get to the market quickly. So that's interesting. All right. Thanks, Daniel. Can you share a little bit on your insights about this? Like, and maybe you are now in India, right? So how is I want to make the bridge to more like micro mobility, and what is your perspective on that? Like the huge investments needed in both hardware and software, and then aiming towards profitability.
The micromobility in India question's a big one. We're not actually doing any business directly in India at the minute. So our setting up the office here is partly about, actually bootstrapping the company. It supports our cash flow because there's immense talent here in product space in particular. So we saw an opportunity. We have some clients in the Middle East and Asia Pacific. So we needed something closer to that time zone.
Yeah.
You can get incredible talent here, in particularly, even though all of our developers remain in the UK, we have our product team based here, our support services as well, and some of our design team. So actually that's really helped with cash flow, because obviously the economy to scale building, team here compared to the UK is vast. So I'm not actually doing any specific mobility work here. There is a huge opportunity, I think, particularly in the micromobility, I think in the two-wheeler space as well. We're just starting work with an electric scooter, more like moped company, who have a few companies, a few locations, but they're looking at India as well as a huge market here. The kind of two-wheel sales would blow your mind. I don't know if you've ever seen them. It's like monthly sales are in the hundreds of thousands. It's a huge push for electrification here as well.
Yeah. All right. And just another question: how is the adoption of like solar then? I mean, obviously it's similar to us in Indonesia, and then in Australia there's an abundance of power just available if you go outside. How's that in India?
I haven't seen much. The government seemingly is doing a lot here to promote sustainable energy, but it's still predominantly coal-based power here, right? And I don't think that's going to change. I think the biggest struggle they'll have here is the infrastructure. I think even in the best of cases, even in the best parts of the biggest cities, infrastructure is a challenge in India. So I was home in the UK in the summer with an EV, and it was very easy. There's lots of charging stations, but even then it was still, I had to go somewhere specifically to charge the car because I didn't have it in my house. I think, here where I am, I know of one place within a 20-kilometer radius where people can charge their electric cars. So everybody needs to do it from home. And also, there's power cuts. The grid is under kind of quite a lot of strain. So I think EV adoption will struggle with the infrastructure first.
So that is a whole different animal in terms of investments that is also needed. I mean, we can all do our best from a business perspective, but indeed we rely on governments as well in order to create the possibility for electrification. It has so many challenges, but I think in countries like Indonesia, India, a more decentralized approach can also work, because again we can put solar panels anywhere, but then just balancing power going in and out would be a huge challenge. But I believe in that idea.
I think one of the things that might change quite rapidly with the EV, there's a lot of manufacture here of EVs. India generally doesn't like to import things. They make it difficult to import. So most things are manufactured in India. And there's quite a lot of EV companies now starting up. I don't know if you saw in the news that they've just discovered a huge lithium mine here in the north of India.
Yeah, it was like 2 days ago, right?
The third biggest, I think they're going to have the third biggest amount of lithium or something. Which would be crazy. So that, in theory, that should really boost that. Having cheap access to a core part of making batteries should really boost that part of the value in the supply chain.
All right. Thanks, Paul. You are with your feet in the mud when it comes to mobility as a service and supporting all these applications. Of course, you've seen them come and go, I think. So what is your take on, like, especially from a software perspective, on the investments needed and the possibilities to make it profitable? I mean,
I think Dan already answered some of the question, and I think everybody does. When we when we started the company, it's a spin-off of the data analytics company we have. So we wanted to create that you could buy a ticket everywhere, anywhere, anytime. And we believe that mass apps on itself won't have a future, but that people will buy transportation there where they need it. In the Uber app, or in the Google app, or in the Move It app, or in the Booking app, or in the airline app, or wherever. Even in the banking app. You see in Belgium, the biggest selling mobility app is, besides the public transport companies, is a banking app. So it's really interesting. You never know where people want to buy the mobility. So what we have done is that when the whole context shifted around 6 months ago, 1 year ago, the first thing we did is focus. What are we going to do? No more micromobility, because integration of micromobility, there is no traction. The money we can earn is really, really low, and they go bankrupt every 2 months, and then we have to integrate with a new company. So we stopped integrating micromobility.
Yeah, I see them in the news, of course, in the Netherlands, and these companies again heavily funded and on paper are super interesting.
Valuation of 2 billion, and then in the end they were only 20 million or something like that. So it's really, really, really interesting what happens there. So focus, that was number one. The only thing we said for sure that's going to stay and will be never standardized in my lifetime is public transport companies that have a huge distance to cover, like Deutsche Bahn, SNCF, that's the French railways, the English railways. They have no reason, no burning platform. I just answered it. They have no burning platform to standardize. The European wants to standardize it, but that's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, because it means a heavily invested industry that needs to replace thousands and thousands of ticket vending machines, a back-end system, etc. So one, focus. Two is that what we also changed is we created the market. So we're now in Holland, the market leader. We're becoming bigger and bigger in Europe. So we stopped pricing our services to get into the market. So we stopped. What we have done is uppriced our services. So we increased just the price for our services, sometimes doubled it.
Okay.
Because there is nowhere to go. It was a tough cookie to discuss with our customers, but you know, if you don't want it, do it yourself, and you have to invest millions. So so they didn't leave, they just had to pay more. So 2 was real market prices. 3, what we also did is, if somebody wanted something special, so not the Black Ford, then they needed to pay additional money. If they have no business case, so there's no additional money, we didn't build it, so that we didn't develop the software for them. Because in the end, I hate developing software for many different customers with many different specifications, because that's not our business. Our business is one size fits all. And if we need to change that, so that's the third thing we did. And the fourth thing is really easy, but you can't do that forever, is cost cutting. So we got rid of staff, and it's really harsh, really hard. But we really cut off all the waste, and now we're really to the bone. And I think the core team we have is around 20, and it's really, and I love it. The communication is easier, everything is more fun now.
Yeah, but it's really lean for a company of, especially considering the impact you are having in the Netherlands and also in Europe. So that's super good to hear. Yeah, and of course, like if you we can just say it's super trivial, but making profit is indeed a matter of like increasing revenue and decreasing your costs. It's
and it's about your own self-esteem, the company self-esteem, where you are, because with Links we are one of the few that's doing that services in the world, working for public transport companies, doing the data analytics. We know our value, so we know how to price ourselves. With Anzo, it's a new services. We don't know if there is a demand for it. We didn't know that exactly. And now, you see there is a demand. You can start increasing your price and shift. And the other thing we also did is share the development costs. I think that's also really important with the companies that really wanted the solution. I think that also helped.
Yeah. Okay. So the implementation of your software.
Yeah,
that's what you're referring to. Yeah, I think that's only honest. I mean, it's their product, right?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All right, thanks. Yeah, especially indeed micromobility in Europe. We all know how challenging it can be there. We've seen pictures of motorbikes this week in the Dutch newspapers, just put on big parking places, unused, and or that this whole sustainability dream that we're all working on is then being shattered, right? So that's it's really really shitty to see, and that's my bridge to Jan. I mean, Jan and I, of course, are from the Netherlands, so we follow the news. But Jan, can you share a little bit on how that's going in here in Indonesia? It's like how to balance expenses and investments in the path to growth.
Yeah, it's thanks for the question, Jochen. So, like Dan already said earlier, and I think Paul briefly, I think a focus on like where you're going is like super important, because obviously like everything comes down from obviously your mission on what you want to achieve. So for example, what we did in our case in the first 2 years, we heavily focused on the development of our platform, and we just tried to make sure that we got to a proper MVP, so we could run to market and make sure that we validate our product. Are you still here, Jochen? I think I'm not sure if Jochen is gone. Oh yeah, here you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, all right. Connection was gone a little bit. But then again, for example, in the case with Malali, like just like you mentioned, we've seen a lot of messages and news articles in the Dutch newspapers that these sharing mobility companies that go bankrupt, or they kind of restart their company into a new entity. They kick out the old shareholders and they move on. In the case with us, like most of the investment really primarily came to the development of the product, and we're not that capital intensive because all the vehicles that we're using are pretty much other people's vehicles. So in our case, I think we're pretty lucky there that we, or at least it's a different model than what most of these companies chasing after in the Netherlands, for example.
Yeah, I think the whole hardware aspect is indeed different with Malali, right? And that is, of course, one of the biggest investments that we need to do in order to become operational. And I think, yeah, we actually benefit from the situation. I don't know if you want to share a bit on how we obtain these vehicles, but I think we benefit a little bit of the surplus of vehicles in the market right now.
Yeah. So what you saw happening, well, especially in Bali, is like when we purchased these bikes. I mean, you purchase a bike. For example, like we initially try to have a hybrid solution where we partly have our own fleet, and then on the side we wanted to have a fleet of our vendors to make sure that there's always enough bikes available and the quality was maintained. However, what you see happening right now, especially with the inflation, like you purchase a bike for a certain price, and the prices have been just soaring here in Bali. They're just like literally doubled when it comes to houses, but also to motorbike rentals, just the very regular motorbike rentals. And that's kind of interesting to see that that even objects like renting bikes just doubled in prices. So it's interesting development.
Yeah, everyone is doubling prices everywhere, I think, which is really annoying because it makes the economy a tough environment at the moment. But to sum it up, I think everyone here, and it's a bit surprising on one hand, on the other hand, of course not, but everyone is just like focus on what you are good at. And then I've got a question from Thelma Corrado. excuse me if I mispronounced the name. But the question is, where do you derive insights from to attain clarity of purpose and precision of the application?
I think there's probably two clear parts to that. The first is that we spend a lot of time talking to customers, potential customers, the market, the governments, the public transport authorities, to really kind of understand what they're doing, what they think they're going to need. So customer and market and stakeholder feedback is essential. And then we take the management group away probably for 2 days a month, and we go through the strategy and we go through the plan and we refine it and we update it and we work through it again. So I think there's a real piece of sort of shared mind and shared accountability within the leadership group for really deeply understanding where we're aiming for as an organization and really challenging each other.
How much time do you spend with each other discussing these ideas and just continuously fine-tuning it?
We're currently doing a full day a month just on that, and then we do a leadership meeting every week to just update everything. But we do a day a month to go away and really kind of work through the strategy and all the strategic programs and really challenge each other.
Yeah, all right, good to hear. Yeah, I want to use this also as a bridge to the different to the other topics. So hardware lifecycle in the mobility industry, as we mentioned micromobility, of course, but we see that although within the electrical mobility space we are evangelists of a more sustainable world, but on the other hand we have batteries that need to be thrown away. On the other hand, there are vehicles that are decommissioned just after 3 months sometimes. The micromobility, the e-scooters, they are worthless after 3 months. How are you at Nextport working on trying to lengthen the life cycle of buses and other vehicles, and are you guys thinking about concept of more modular approaches?
We're thinking about a lot of things. I'm probably the worst person you could ask that question. In Australia, they tend to want to use buses for 25 to 30 years traditionally, which is wholly impractical in terms of an electrification process, because the core elements, the battery management system, the vehicle management system, and the batteries themselves are simply not going to last that long. And the technologies move on so much in that time that actually, how can you possibly adapt that technology over the period of time? So there's a few things that we are looking at. I think you've got to build the technology to be relevant for what it is. We focus the materials. We're trying to make the buses much lighter. We're trying to put much less material into them so that actually you're taking less out over time, and really sort of engineer them for the purpose that they're there for. So rather than engineering something that'll last 30 years and carrying all of that weight in terms of the steel and the infrastructure around every day, engineer it so it's relevant for 10 years and then and fully recyclable, or as recyclable as possible afterwards. So I think we see that. I think in the batteries, we're looking at it and thinking, well, at a public transport level, I think the batteries will last 8 years, maybe 10, maybe a little bit longer. There will be a second-hand market for those vehicles after that, and I think that will be on shorter runs. It'll be on the school bus runs. It'll be on charter runs, things like that. And then I think when you get to that 10 to 12-year market, there's absolutely no way those buses will still be in operation. But the batteries probably have a second or third life attached to them. So we see the opportunity to recycle a lot of the bus, and then look at the batteries as having a second life. So we can see them going into energy storage systems, house batteries, and forming part of that grid infrastructure that then enables the operations to work even better, and maybe even putting them into different types of vehicles altogether. So we see that opportunity to really reuse as opposed to extend the lifetime.
Okay. All right. So that it's a nice take. Just accept that they will last for 10 years and then build it for that, instead of Like indeed, like the old diesel buses. If you go to South America, that you still have these old diesel buses, 40, 50-year-old, and here in Indonesia as well, driving. Which on one hand is great, but on the other hand, they're old diesel buses, so they're super polluting.
Yeah, absolutely. They really are.
Yeah, yeah. Right, Daniel, can you maybe from your perspective share your ideas on this lengthening the life cycle of vehicles and other parts of hardware?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, we're predominantly working in automotive, so cars, and they kind of have the traditional value chain, which would be, you know, new car from the manufacturer goes out to be a rental or a lease, and then it has that life cycle, and then it goes to be remarketed. What we're trying to do, particularly with subscription, you know, a more dynamic rental and access to the car, is just to add more links into that value chain, so that asset can be more things to more people. And generate more revenue. So we're working with a client in the UAE who own the licensing for Hertz franchise rental. They have a really big fleet, and they obviously have their rental fleet. But we've implemented a subscription solution that goes in after the rentals. So it's secondhand subscription of vehicles, and it just basically extends that lifetime and revenue of each of those assets. And kind of targets a different market, because Dubai has a lot of expats that are there, you know, 1, 2, 3 years at a time. Rental is too short term, leases potentially too long terms, as well as ownership.
Okay.
Sorry, Jochen, you had a question?
No, sorry, I was coughing.
Okay. So yeah, it's just about, you know, with all of these different ways of accessing vehicles, you can extend the life cycle of it by adding more links into the value chain, and that works particularly well if you own the value chain of the vehicle, right? So you know, I think particularly in automotive, the best mobility solutions will be run by people that own the fleet and not asset light, you know, kind of like providers, I think, particularly in automotive, because actually at the end of the day, there's still the money is in selling the car at the end of it, right, at its peak. You know, peak value.
That's where, of course, a large volume of money comes in, but it's super interesting because then of course mentioned like, okay, we just build it for what it is. If it's designed for, or it's meant for 10 years, we'll just build it for 10 years and make sure it's we can decommission it properly. And what you're saying is like, okay, within the life cycle, we want to utilize the vehicle better, and of course with better utilization, the consequence should be less production.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thanks. I have a question coming in over the future of micromobility in India, and I know it's a bit off topic for you, but since it's so directed to you, I just want to ask you anyway.
Sure. The future, I kind of covered it a little bit, I think. So in terms of micromobility, we mean kind of anything. So two-wheelers, obviously, in India are predominantly like mopeds. When we talk micromobility in London, it's kind of the smaller e-scooters that we have. Where I'm from in Milton Keynes, they're big, you know, the small ones you hop on and you take them on the redway. But in India, it's predominantly two-wheel mopeds, I think we call them. I think there's massive opportunity. There's lots of challenges. So particularly in the manufacture, a couple of the big brands here are having problems with fires of their batteries, right? So there's a lot of heat here. I think battery life cycle, like the lifespan of a battery, is lower because of humidity and heat, and also the infrastructure. They're the challenges. The positives are lots of people who want access to vehicles more and more, right? And also the volume, the potential volume of sales or access to two-wheelers is bigger than you'll get anywhere other than, you know, China. So huge potential, lots of challenges. And actually not many people in the space, particularly in the EV space, doing, you know, mobility solutions. I also think there's a huge market here for delivery drivers. So India's huge on, you know, I don't know if you know the Zomato model, you know, similar to Deliveroo in the UK, where they'll pick up your food from any restaurant locally. You book it, a driver will go and get it and bring it. And they're kind of they're introducing that concept for almost everything. And I think enabling those drivers to access EVs, particularly two-wheelers, would be a huge market. Cheaper for them to run. They're doing short trips, regularly around the city. It's hard to drive a car in lots of places because there's lots of vehicles on the road. So two-wheelers make sense. And I think they would, and there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people doing this on a daily basis. So I've always felt that that's a big opportunity in India to get those people electrified as soon as possible, and empower them to run their business more effectively, and also clean up the air, which is something that's really important here, particularly in the cities.
I think where you are sounds pretty familiar to where we are.
Yeah. I think so, because well, we're in Goa actually, so it's a little bit different, but and I guess more similar to Bali. But then once you go into the cities, you go to Delhi, it's there's a huge need for cleaning up the air there. I think it's no secret.
All right, Jan, we have a question for you coming in. So I want to ask you this question, and then I want to jump to the third topic, which will be for Paul to get started with. So question to you, Jan. How confident are you in entering the electric motorbike market in Bali, considering that the potential customer base is not yet familiar with electrical motorbikes?
Well, I mean, you see, especially in the last year, there is more and more awareness on the fact that we have to pioneer in making sure that that we're driving this change to driving electric vehicles, and you can see there is quite a push from the side of the government, and also, for example, companies like Gojek and Grab, they're providing their drivers, just like Daniel mentioned. They do this actually here, where they provide their drivers with electric vehicles, to do those deliveries around the island. So I think if you would ask me this question like 4 years ago, I think my confidence on that level would be way less than it is this year. I think that especially after COVID, people have been rethinking, and I think this year I'm pretty confident that people are more aware of this, and this is only it's only getting better, I would say.
Yeah, if I have to jump on this question, what we see is that at Malali, then, is that the people who stay longer in Bali, they tend to be more aware of the environment, and
right.
The tourists who stay for 2 weeks, they care less. I mean, obviously, like they have to utilize their holiday. Maximum.
I mean, besides from the fact that we're also like serving, the business to consumer market, we're also doing a business to business channel where we're actually having a lot of collaborations with hotels that do want to drive these changes. And when I speak to general managers at hotels, they are aware of this, and they are very supportive of this idea that of helping and supporting this drive towards electric driving.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jan. I would like to get to the third topic, which I have to ask Paul, because I already you already shared a little bit your vision on this. So like 5 years ago, there was this idea of like having one mobility as a service super app. I don't know who came up with this idea. Probably some consultant company, and I think it was a consultancy company who said that there will be a mass super app, and many companies chased this dream, heavily funded, all with the idea of like becoming the Netflix of mobility. And indeed, we have seen crazy valuations of these companies. One of them reached $1 billion valuation within 10 months, and then I don't know what it's doing right now. So reality of mobility as a service is challenging, and because we are deep in this as well, right? We are building these integrations with Safari for these companies, and we see there's a huge lack of standardization, and that's where you jump in, of course, Paul, I think. So what is your what do you think is the future of the Maas super app, Paul?
Thanks for the question. And also maybe in the answer is also a little bit an answer or my vision back to the asset question, because my question of the future is we have enough assets. We have enough rolling stock, buses, trains, mopeds, cars. The question is, how can we utilize it better? I think that's the only question we are facing. How can we use our current assets? Because, for example, if I look at the Netherlands, I think we are the most dense country in the world. If you look at Utrecht Central Station, it's a small station compared to some of the stations in China, but still, you know, it's quite a big station in the Netherlands. We have a parking place under the ground for 40,000 bicycles. So in the morning, 40,000 people come by bike, it's huge. It's one of the biggest in the world. I think it's the biggest one. So it has two layers. It's 2 layers. You go with your bicycle. There are lanes in the bicycle shed. You put your bike. It costed millions and millions of euros to build. People put their bike there in the morning. They leave it. They go in the evening. They come back and they take their bike. And the strange thing is, still there is a rental place inside that bicycle spot to rent out bicycles. Because the people that came from another station and need a bike in that city, they rent a bike over there and they start cycling. So I really believe, and that links to your question, is that there is not going to be, in my vision, one big super app. Yes, we would love to, or yes, the big tech companies in the US would like to. But I believe, and if I look into the future, I see that Uber is going to be very important. Lyft is going to be important. All those companies are going to be important. But in the end, your car, like a Mercedes or an Audi or Toyota, they will have apps associated to open up the car, to make it keyless, so you can exchange your car quite easily with somebody else, like Airbnb, with houses. So integrating all modes of public transport, mobility, public transport, we just have to open it up and integrate it into those front ends. I just mentioned the example of a banking app in Belgium. That's the second largest selling public transport application in Belgium. So you have the Belgium Railways, they sell the most tickets. And then you have the KBC, that's a banking app. I don't know why, don't ask me, but they are selling most mobility in Belgium. I still don't have a clue.
They sell tickets, yeah, okay.
And I think people trust the bank. They want to do business with them. And for the bank, it's a very logical step because they want traction every day. And public transport and mobility is something you need to do every day. But then you go like,
yeah, a large bank already has a huge customer base, of course. And it's related to payments. So it sounds a bit illogical, but it also has logical elements.
And maybe a supermarket can be a big ticket generator or an event or whatever. And now we're integrating into airlines, and we see that a lot of airlines fly into big airports. And in Europe, there is legislation on its way that you're not allowed to fly flights shorter than 1 or 2 hours. So in France, they're already implementing it. So you need to have integration into public transport systems to get all those people away from those airports. So you see different contexts drive different apps. And if you ask who came up with the idea of Maas, I think it was Sampo with Wim. We more or less start writing about the whole Maas ID integration.
Which is a valid idea, I think, still, right? It's easy to criticize it now, but I remember reading it back then. I was like, okay, he really knows what he's talking about it. And many people have believed him in this. We just see it's super complicated to do, and in my opinion, so I believe in standardization of hardware, standardization of software, standardization of communication between companies, and then allowing like fair competition between the apps, because I believe that some kid in Amsterdam should be able to build the Mobility Amsterdam app and come up with solutions just for that specific region.
Yeah, I think we have to look at, and that's more a policy side of it, is how can you increase the utilization of the assets? Because now Corona or COVID was quite a blessing in disguise for us, because because public transport operators are facing quite a decrease of number of travelers due to several reasons. One, a lot of people bought a car in Holland because they didn't want to go in the train or the bus. And a lot of people only worked 2 or 3 days at the office. So a decrease in number of daily traffic to the office. So you see that there is a decrease around 10% for public transport companies. So now they're thinking, okay, how do I get in the money? So they are opening it up. They are more willing to standardize. They are more willing to integrate. They're more willing to new ventures to increase the number of transactions.
Okay, super interesting. I wasn't aware of that, but of course now they have to innovate or be open for innovations. Yeah, all right. Thanks, Paul. Daniel, what is your perspective on like the MAS super app? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Paul. I actually think it's not obtainable where we are now. I think there's too much complexity. I think what's going to work best, the problem we see at the minute is that people want different things, right? So there's definitely a leaning towards membership-based mobility products. So customers want flexibility, they want ongoing, they want everything bundled in. Car subscriptions touching on that, but I think it's still got a long way to go. But people want different variations of that. Some people are going to want like a premium subscription that covers everything. Someone comes and includes your car, you know, you get servicing regularly, everything's bundled in. Or someone might want something that's very basic and just a simple car to drive around. So to answer the needs of everyone in one app, I don't think is possible. I think you're better off focusing on a niche or a particular customer market, or potentially multiple with one fleet. So if you've got a fleet of cars, let's say, and you want to run subscription, you might want to run some cars to people with a premium bundle, and you might want to run some to, you know, people that just want to take it for a week to run around the countryside. So I think you've got to kind of identify specific markets and build products around them at this stage, and not try and bundle everything in together. But that's kind of less about, you know, day-to-day transportation, and more about kind of something closer to ownership of vehicles. So I kind of see the difference there. But I agree with Paul with the challenges faced in kind of bringing everything transport together. Feels a long way off from where we're at.
It goes a long way off. There's a company I am familiar with who approaches like a more B2B approach, where they offer the app to larger companies, and then it competes basically with leasing cars. And then of course, like we have to integrate a lot of modes of mobility. And I believe in that form because it's subscription, it's like long-term relationships that you build with your clients. It's B2B sales, so it's much easier than B2C. If you nail one client, you have thousands of users. So it's more viable, I think. Jan, we've been working on these apps for a long time. Right? We've been building so many of them, and we've of course we've seen them come and go as well. And I think with all of these apps, I support the idea, but we also saw that eventually it's sometimes just super challenging to make it sustainable. What is your opinion now, like after 4 years building these apps as well?
Well, just like you said, Jochem, it's also, I mean, there's a lot of innovation in the market. There's a lot of like companies that come with bright ideas, and some they are, I don't know, pretty good ideas. But then obviously also from a, you know, point of regulation from the government, I mean, there needs to be obviously a good framework. I think what you saw in the Netherlands this year, I think we changed the law where you now have to like, you're now required to wear a helmet, which then comes up with like, you know, small issues like where are you going to store the helmet? And I mean, this was a case like specifically in the Netherlands. But you know, if you would ask me, it's like, is there going to be like one big super app? Yeah, it's. I think I would agree more with Dan here also, and with Daniel and Paul said here earlier. It's yeah, it's. I think it's challenging, but it's eventually. Yeah, it's a very interesting market, but I mean, it's you know, to make sure that all these apps, they funnel down to what it should be. I think the government should also give a very clear perspective on what is possible and what not. And if you, for example, right now have you know, COVID, just like Paul said earlier, where you have 10% less transactions in, you know, you're constantly innovating. So there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of changes and challenges there, I think.
Yeah, it's especially like a public transport company who operates on like a 2, 3, 4% margin. If you lose 10% of your revenue, it's really challenging. Yeah, and I also, if I look back at so long of building apps, I do believe in this custom build. Also, what Daniel is referring to, like these niches, like build an experience app for Amsterdam or for in Bali. That definitely works. I believe. But getting everything on one app, it's yeah.
Can I add an
Yeah,
thing?
sure.
What I was just referring to Daniel, and I think what we see and what Sampo of Wim is referring to, that you pay one monthly fee and you can travel whatever you want. And I'm really stuck in the idea that we have to start thinking about how can we utilize the current asset we have. And I think London's already showing it, because London is completely filled up with people. And during the rush hour in the morning, you can't use public transport anymore because it's too busy. So they use the gates to keep people out of the system. So if you go to Victoria Station at 8 in the morning, right, they keep the gates closed until it's safe enough to go to the platform again. And I think that's really how we should look at it. And there is a kind of contradiction, a kind of opposite that says, okay, we want to have mass. It implicates something like Netflix. You pay a subscription and you can use whenever you want it. And now I see, for example, in Germany, in some countries in Europe, you see that the government moves to a kind of flat fee subscription. It means that you pay 49 euros in Germany and you can travel the whole month for free for the 49 euros. But then my question will be is, how are you going to manage all those people in the future? Because it's going to be too busy. So you need to put new assets in. And then what I see is you don't have enough infrastructure. You don't have enough geographical space to put all those people in. So you're going to face a new issue. So I think, and I don't know how exactly to solve it, but the utilization of the assets, I think that's where we have to price it. It means if you run a bus, even when it's a fossil or an electrical bus, when it's empty, it's nonsense, because also an electrical bus, the electricity has to be produced somewhere, and it will cost fossil fuel probably.
Yeah.
But you replace the offset to another place. I really think that's where we have to, if you really want to solve this issue. But that's really going into the content of this issue.
Yeah, so it's a peer-to-peer marketplace for mobility. And then who has an open API to integrate in all other apps, something like that.
Something like that, or government has to step in and decide, not about standardization, but about, okay, what do we think is important for a country and what do we want to support? And I think there's a lot of business possibilities to go there, to scale up your company in that area.
Yeah, it's a long run, I think, but there's a huge possibility. I would like to go to the last topic, and let's start with you, Paul. We're talking anyway. So, like, what would be your number one tip for the people who are now listening, who are also building mobility related applications, who have their fleets, who do other stuff. Everyone is engaged with this industry. What is your number one tip besides focus? We already discussed focus.
But yeah, I think it's related to focus. Make a minimal viable product stupid and simple and release it as quickly as possible. And other people fail as quickly as possible, but you don't want to fail. But build something very simple, very easy that people understand, release it, and see if people are starting to use it.
So a little bit of the Silicon Valley mentality of
oh yes,
just
finding the product market fit, right? That's what you want to do as fast as possible.
Exactly. And because investors want to scale up very quickly because they need to get rid of the money, but wait with it until you really have issues with the scaling problems, then start hiring people. That's my own learning. Otherwise, you're really busy with people in your company.
And in the end, we should be busy with making money, right?
And customers, and not your staff.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Paul. What is your number one tip, Jan?
Hyper focus and dedication, and making sure that your mission is pixel point clear.
Yeah.
I think if you have that, then you build your whole strategy, and just like Paul said earlier, you make sure that you have an MVP and you run to market as fast as you can and find the perfect product market fit, and just make sure you generate good revenue. Then the rest will come.
Yeah, I think with the challenge, of course, also to Paul, like you can build something, you can get users, you can have a product market fit, but then having like a business validity that is a whole different challenge, of course. But yeah, again, fill fast, work fast, test out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. What is your number one tip? With all,
I think you talked about it a little bit earlier. It's this idea that building a business is about increasing your revenue, but it's also about holding the costs down and managing those. But probably the one thing that I keep coming back to at the moment is this idea that it's okay to cut. You have to keep on being able to cut back on things and stay really, really lean and really flexible as a result. I think Paul kind of referred to it a little bit, that having too many people is not a good thing, but having the wrong people or not the right people for where you are as a business is a really bad thing. So sometimes it's okay to cut some stuff out so that other stuff can grow. Yeah,
and I think there are for me that I see it's a challenge because there are like specific types of people within certain phases of your company that can excel. So it can be a tough cookie to just see people stuck within new roles and positions, but they're capable, but it's just not working anymore. These things are indeed challenging, but yeah, we need to pay the bills. Right? So that it's a big challenge. All right. Thanks, Dan. Daniel, what is your number one takeaway?
For me, it's making technology your biggest investment. I think for multiple reasons, one of which aligning with the keeping it lean. If you've got the right technology in place, you don't have to hire lots of people. If you can automate as much as possible, you can integrate as much as possible from day one. You don't have to have lots of people doing all of your operations. And also, if the experience is seamless and digitized for the customer, they're going to really enjoy it and they're going to come back to you. And also, you don't need as many customer support people. So you're building a really great customer experience with good technology, and B, you're also streamlining your operations so it keeps your business lean. So I really think that technology is the biggest and most important investment in any mobility product.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning the customer support. I really think I've seen companies fail on that. Like their economies, their business model was worked out super nicely. Everything was right, but then at the end, there were just too many people calling all the time with small little incidents, and then just dropping away their margins, and then they just had to stop, which was a shame. So thanks for mentioning that. All right, with these great tips and suggestions, I would like to end the webinar. For me, it was super interesting. I also had like really new ideas and insights, which I think we can apply here in Bali as well. So thanks. For me, it was inspiring, and I hope for everyone who joined, it was exciting and inspiring as well. Leah, I would like to give the mic back to you.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the great speakers who sharing their experience and knowledge. We hope you found this session insightful and informative. For those who have missed the webinar, a recording will be available in the next coming days. So for those who want to learn more about our company, It's a Virus, you can find our website in the chat box. And once again, thank you for signing in. Thank you for the amazing speakers. We appreciate your time and hope you have a great day. See you at the next webinar. Bye.